Amos 5:21-24. I despise your festivals, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them, and the offerings of well-being of your fatted animals I will not look upon. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps, but let justice roll down like water, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Revelations 22:1-5. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit each month, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Nothing accursed will be found there any more, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. And there will be no more night. They need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever.
It's a great privilege as chair of Christian Aid Ireland to be able to come and say a big official thank you to the work that you do, for the work that you do here in Newton Breda. We really, really appreciate it. And we know Jennifer and her team are absolutely fabulous and do a brilliant job. And we are so grateful and value every piece of work that you engage in for the sake of the most vulnerable and marginalised people of our world. In all the various photos that came with the Christian Aid stories this year, my attention has been gripped by the photo of Aurelia from Guatemala, whose story is at the centre of our appeal. And it's not so much this one that's on the screen right now, although it's very important because she's proudly holding some of her newly produced organic fertiliser in her own hands. But this one caught my eye. It's where she's praying with a friend. It's in the devotional material that I think you as members of the congregation have already received. She's praying with a friend before they make their cacao flour. And it's a picture that tells us a story of a faith which is very much a natural and instinctive part of Aurelia's everyday life. It reminded me of my own mother. It took me right back to my childhood. My mum would have prayed before anything she went to do in the kitchen. Money was scarce in those days. It wasn't so very long after the Second World War. I was born in the early 50s, and every ingredient was precious and couldn't be wasted on a recipe that might have gone wrong. God's guidance was as essential in the kitchen as it was in every other aspect of life. Prayer was as natural as breathing. We mightn't be just as worried about the cooking or baking going wrong nowadays, at least in this part of the world, for there's a bit more money to go round. But I am sure that many of us today still do that kind of instinctive praying. I know I find it hugely reassuring to talk to God throughout my day about the ordinary things of life, as well as the big issues which loom across our wider world. In John's Gospel, chapter 15, Jesus talks about us living our lives in close relationship with him, just as the branches are so intimately intertwined with the vine tree. Jesus, make my heart more like yours, was the prayer that Pope Francis prayed from childhood. It was taught to him by his grandmother, I believe. When we live in that kind of close relationship with Jesus Christ, it becomes instinctive to open our hearts to love others in the way that Jesus commanded his followers to do. This is my command, says Jesus in John 15. Love one another. The prophet Amos in the Bible raged against a form of religion which has no mercy at its heart. And he cried, let justice roll down like a river and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. And it is out of Jesus Christ's heart of compassion that Christian Aid first came into being. It's our 80th anniversary, as we said, this year. And I hope you will join us for our anniversary service on the 20th of June in St. Anne's Cathedral. It's a Friday evening. It was no coincidence that the first collection took place in churches and cathedrals throughout Britain and Ireland in the second week of May and on the Sunday after VE Day. The uppermost concern that was recognised in the churches at that time was for the many refugees in Europe after the Second World War. Climate change was probably an unknown concept when the first Christian Aid collection came into being. But the healing of the nations was very much in mind. Our name at that time was Christian Reconstruction in Europe. We raised more than £80,000, equivalent to more than £3 million in today's money, to assist the refugees, often to pay for food parcels sent to those living in displaced person camps. By the 1950s, we expanded to working with refugees from Palestine, Korea, and China. And it was in the same decade that the concept of a Christian Aid Week was introduced. Let justice roll down like a river, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. From those early beginnings, a movement developed, which began with the churches, but reached out to people of all faiths and none. We became a partnership of people, churches, and local organisations committed to ending poverty worldwide. Our values are taken from our Christian faith: justice, equality, dignity, integrity, and love. We take our cue from many of the Old Testament prophets who continually challenged God's people to act justly, show mercy, and live humbly. And from Jesus himself, who out of his own deep heart of compassion called upon us to love our neighbour as we love ourselves. Let justice roll down like a river, and righteousness as an ever-flowing stream. Christian Aid Ireland works in three main ways: through partners to support communities to live full lives free from poverty; two, responding to emergencies and helping people who've experienced disasters such as earthquakes, floods, famine, conflict, and war, as Gaza right now; calling on decision makers to make the world a fairer place for everyone. Christian Aid Week this year featured the stories of women from the indigenous Quechua community of Guatemala, as we said to the children, living in an area which is suffering the worst impacts of climate change. Now, the names of the two women in our stories from Guatemala this year are quite similar. Aurelia is the grandmother who prays over the wonderful recipes she prepares for her local community. She has 8 grown-up children and lives with one of her sons and his wife. Aurelia's grandchildren visit her home every day. She has to collect water twice a day from a sinkhole, we saw it in the video, deep below the ground. It's getting harder and harder for her to climb down and up again. In Aurelia's lifetime, water sources could be found much closer to home, but both heat waves and industrial plantations have drained them dry. Collecting water takes longer, which means community members have less time for other activities, such as selling produce that allows them to then buy other things their family needs. This pushes families further into the poverty trap. Aurelia says climate change is killing our crops, and this is our food. The climate crisis and industrial plantations have changed Quechua land dramatically. Heat waves, storms, and unpredictable seasons are ravaging their farms. That's Aurelia. Amelia is the other woman featured in this year's appeal, and she's the one I spoke to the children about. She's a resourceful and determined 24-year-old farmer with a husband and 2 children, and as we said, a goalkeeper in her local football team. She has grown up with her local river. Water is precious in her culture, but that same deep river that she learned to swim in has become so shallow and so polluted. I worry about what my children will eat, she says. Malnutrition rates in young children in her area are dangerously high. As the river runs dry and water becomes scarce, The vital crops that Amelia depends on wither and die before her eyes. It's a heartbreaking injustice when no more than a mile away, industrial plantations are taking the last of the region's natural resources to feed the world's richest countries. As Amelia's farm is devastated by heat, hunger, crop failures, and water shortage, the search for solutions becomes critical. Let justice roll down like a river and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. The Bible is full of references to rivers of water. There's a river springing up from the earth which keeps that very first garden in Genesis beautifully watered. God promises in times of drought to pour water on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground, even as he pours out his life-giving spirit on God's people. Jesus himself invites anyone who is thirsty to come to him and drink, and speaks of rivers of water flowing from within those who believe. The very last chapter of the Bible is a vision of the life to come, and we see the river of the water of life, clear as crystal, and on each side of the river stands the tree of life, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. And to echo Amos's words again, let justice roll down like a river and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. It's a foretaste of God's vision of the new heaven and the new earth. Today in Guatemala, thanks to Christian Aid's partner, Coonguhop, Aurelia and Amelia and our colleagues have changed the way they farm and are now planting resilient crops, endeavouring to conserve water and make organic fertiliser from easily available natural materials. Co-op trains people like Aurelia and Amelia in ways of farming that work with nature so that they produce crops that can cope with the impact of the climate crisis. By working with Coonguhop, they have learned skills and knowledge to grow native seeds that are better suited to the climate crisis. They are producing their own organic fertiliser, creating nurseries and constructing rainwater collection systems. Coonguhop also provide them with seeds and tools. With the support from Coonguhop, Aurelia is learning how to make chocolate and to sell it at a good price. And with her profits, Aurelia can buy household essentials like soap and salt and support her young grandchildren to stay in school. She's a great leader in her local community and has encouraged many others to learn new ways of working too. Amelia has learned how to grow nutritious food for her children and, among many other things, how to look after her banana trees. But it's an ongoing battle. Amelia says, for the future, I don't know what to expect. It could be worse, it could be better. The only one who can tell is God. We have been so enjoying the beauty of nature around us during these recent sunny days, while giving praise for God's glories all around. Let's commit to support our global neighbours, for whom the seasons are dramatically and dangerously shifting. People who are living the brutal reality of ever-intensifying temperatures, storms, droughts and floods. Families whose children don't have enough nutritious food to thrive and grow. Let justice roll down like a river and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. On Aurelia and Amelia's behalf, I come to say thank you for all the generous support that is enabling this work. We appreciate all that you do in this church, whether it's in support of emergency appeals or regular direct debit giving, or through Christian Aid Week and your various special events and the soup lunch today. I can tell you that I have been both proud and humbled by hearing these stories and seeing the difference our gifts make to people on the ground. Sometimes we can hardly bring ourselves to watch the news in the morning or at night or whenever. We fear we're becoming immune to all the horror of modern warfare played out before our eyes. But thank God that we can do something. We can support partners in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Sudan and South Sudan, in Ukraine and its surrounding countries. Not only our giving, but our actions can make a difference. We can sign the petition asking the Prime Minister and the UK government to restore the aid budget and take action against reckless polluters and greedy lenders who create the impossible conditions and put lives at risk in so many low-income countries. When we look to world leaders right now, we can be filled with despair. But Jesus calls us to an agenda that is good news for the poor and freedom for the oppressed. It's an agenda that couldn't be more woke in today's popular language, but it is God's mission, and it comes with God's call to prayer and action. Our praying is such a vital role, and it's another call to ministry we can engage in as we watch the news, praying for God's power and God's kingdom to be seen in our world, and that self-obsessed, power-driven world leaders would be brought down, and that justice would roll down like a river in so many heartbreaking situations. And of course, we can pray along with Aurelia and Amelia and their communities in Guatemala, and for the work of our partners in providing training and support, that they too may see the justice they so richly deserve. I believe if we all started to pray, Jesus, make my heart more like yours. If we all did our part in giving and praying and acting, we would see the healing of many lives in many nations, not just sometime in the future, but right now when it is needed most. Let justice roll down like a river and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. And Lord Jesus, let it begin with me.